Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy, and today we're going to be talking about the idea of not liking a video game or a popular video game and essentially getting berated for that opinion. This is something that I have experienced myself. I have examples of that today, but it's something I'm also very passionate about, where too many people feel like that they get personally attacked if you don't like whatever the X popular thing is at the time. This year, specifically, with the Game Awards coming up, Clair Obscura Expedition 33 is the popular thing, and it is a game that everybody loves, or seemingly so that everybody loves. Now, me personally, I wasn't as high on it, and this has happened time and time in the past where I've not been particularly high on a certain game, and people will downvote your videos. They will say really dumb comments and all that sort of stuff. And it's at this point where I'm like, why do people feel that way? Why do they feel that maybe that I don't like something that they like? What is it? Why have they attached their personality to this one video game? Now, it's okay to have differences of opinions on video games, because that's what leads to interesting conversations. Somebody likes this game and somebody doesn't like this game. Maybe you can meet in the middle. Maybe you can see what those things are that person likes, and maybe you can see what that person doesn't like. But most of the time, when there are games that have blown up, that have become incredibly popular, if you say something negative about it, or you try to put your reasons why you're not a big fan of that game, or what that game you did what you think personally didn't do particularly well, people will just straight up just either berate you, insult you, all that sort of stuff. And it's something that needs to stop. But it also is something that I want to talk about, because I'm not above myself. I have been that person as well. If you want an example of this, Donkey Kong Country is a game that I absolutely love. To me, I wouldn't say it's a perfect game, but there isn't many flaws with it. I think it handles beautifully. The game looks incredible. The music's phenomenal. There aren't many platformers that I would ever put above that title. Now, I am also nostalgia blind. I get it. I played it at a young age. I was very impressionable. That game had a huge impact on me. When I've got people to play that game that did not have the nostalgia that I have, they're like, man, this game doesn't look necessarily as good as it once did. This game controls really badly. And, things like that. Or the level design's not great. And to me, I'm like, wow, foreign. I'm like, no, you are wrong. They're not wrong. Of course they're not wrong. When somebody plays a video game, they can only go off the experience they have. I might disagree, but that doesn't invalidate their statement, their argument, right? Saying game is bad because game is bad, you're probably, you need to do more there. If you say, I do not like this game, I don't like how the controls handle, they feel too slippery, or too stuck in the mud, or I feel laggy, or I don't feel like I'm in control of the character on screen. Now, they don't need to justify their reasons, but now you can understand, okay, why are they feeling that way? Is it because they're used to playing platformers? There's so many factors in it, right? I have been that person with Donkey Kong Country, with Super Smash Brothers, with the Mario games like that. I love those games so much that I'm very passionate about it, and I think sometimes that's where this comes from. However, just because somebody else doesn't enjoy the product that you enjoy does not invalidate your opinion, and it does not invalidate their opinion. You don't need to say anything. Someone says, I didn't enjoy this game, I thought the story was really boring. Cool. No problem. Right? Why then do we have to get this almost attacking stance towards people? So I want to talk about 3 games, well, 4 games technically, but 3 games that, 1 I didn't like, and 2 that I did like that I didn't hold in as high regard. So let's start things off. Hollow Knight is a game that I should, by all standards, enjoy. I love the Metroidvania style games. I love running around, exploring areas, finding the item, using that item to as a weapon, as a way to get around, all that sort of stuff. But Hollow Knight did not gel with me. Now, This game is one of those games where it's like it was made by a very small team. It has a lovely art style. It has all these things going for it. But there was a couple of things that I really didn't enjoy. One being a very personal preference, and the other one I genuinely think was something that could have been improved. If you see my video, I talk a lot about the map system and being lost. In a video game, it's okay not to be hand-holdy, but it's good to have a little direction early on so that the player can kind of understand what they're interacting with the world. So you're basically saying, just this is the sort of direction you want to go in, and the game's teaching you along the way, and then once you kind of get through that tutorial part of the game, you've got a better understanding of how things work and what you're doing, right? That's kind of how most games tend to play. In Hollow Knight, if you make a wrong turn at the very beginning, it feels like it takes a very long time. You're meant to go left and not right, and eventually you'll find the map guy, and then he'll give you the map. But if you don't do that, and you go the other way, then you're like exploring, and you don't really know where you're going, and the start of this game is, I think, quite divisive, right? And it's something that I think is, you either like that or you don't. Like, so my comparison is always Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild always tells you, here is where you need to go, right? You need to go here if you want to follow the story. It doesn't force you to go for there. It doesn't tell you which direction you need to come from. It just says, this is where you need to go if you want to continue the story. But how you choose to get there and in what time speed, completely up to you. I think Hollow Knight, personally, would have benefited early on just being like, this is the general direction you need to go. Just get there in your own time, right? And then I think after that, open the game up. And the other thing that I had an issue with was that the platforms in some of the areas blended in with the background, and I genuinely would struggle to see where they started and ended. And I think that's actually a game design problem more so than a subjective opinion, right? So I think objectively they could have made those platforms stand out more, right? Now people will say, oh well, maybe you just didn't look properly or didn't read it correctly. But I do think if you've got issues where your platformers are blending between background and foreground elements, that might be something that needs tweaking. Now, I don't think Hollow Knight is a bad game. I think there's a lot to love about this game. I do not hold it on the pedestals of top 10 Metroidvanias. I don't think it's even close to top 10 Metroidvanias. I think there are significantly better ones, right? Doesn't mean that this game is a bad game. Doesn't mean that this game is anything lower than probably, like, if you're on a scale of like numbers. I hate using the rating system of numbers, but if 7 is good and 8 is great, this is where I'd put it on a 7. I'd be like, this is a good game. It's just not for me because I don't like so many of these elements that I find the beginning part of this game very frustrating. Now, I played 5 to 6 hours of the game before I made my video, which I think is more than enough time to know if you want to play through a game. However, I've had discussions on people get on my case because, oh, you didn't play through the game. Oh, these things sound like a you problem and stuff. That invalidation of, I struggled at the beginning to know where I was going. I found a lot of the areas look the same. I think the map system in this game is downright awful, and some people will disagree there because they like that you don't have like the map marker where you are. I think that's really dumb, but that doesn't put a knock on the quality of the game. That's a decision made by the devs that I disagree with, and I think that's okay to disagree with that. I think that's something that when you're playing a game like that, having some sense of direction is better than having no sense of direction. That's how I like to play Metroidvanias, is having a little bit of idea. Castlevania is kind of the same. There doesn't really be much sense of direction, but you kind of have a better idea when you've got the abilities, because you can just keep running, and you've got quite a lot of places open to it. I think for me, I would like to try Hollow Knight Silksong down the line. I'm not convinced that I'd like it because it sounds like the map system hasn't really improved, but give the game a go again. Hollow Knight, the first Hollow Knight, people say, it take them 4 or 5 attempts, they get into it. It's a fantastic game. I'm not going to give a game 4 or 5 attempts. At that point, if the game has failed to captivate me as the player, and this applies to anybody in any game, if it's failed to captivate me as the player to keep pushing on, to want to explore, to want to get further in, that game's probably not for me, right? Hollow Knight's combat was never the issue. Hollow Knight's difficulty was never the issue. It was this feeling lost, which, maybe that was the point, and also this issue with platforms that were blending in. Graphically, were blending in. I was like, you know what, this isn't the one for me. That's not to say, at any point did I think this game was bad. I just was like, I am not enjoying this. Clearly a well-made game. We're not talking like a 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 10, are we? We're talking something that I think it was a very good game. I don't think it was a great game. I don't think it was an amazing game in that short space of time that I played. Yes, it could have gotten better, but why should I have to go through elements of things that I don't enjoy to get there? Hopefully that makes sense. So, Hollow Knight was the one game on this list that I didn't enjoy, really. Let's move on to a game that I did enjoy, but had some issues with. Baldur's Gate 3 is a game that was universally loved by everyone. It won the Game Awards that year, and it was just a incredible game by an incredible studio. Larian Studios have made one of my favourite all-time RPGs in Divinity Original Sin 2. That game is impeccable. It probably does have issues, but I loved it. I loved it from start to finish. The game was wonderful. I played it at a very a weird time in my life, and it was I just couldn't put the game down. It was so good. Baldur's Gate 3 was a game that I was very excited for because it's Larian. It's more like Divinity. The difference is now we're using D&D rules to make a game. Now, unfortunately, I played the game at launch. Now, Divinity Original Sin 2 Definitive Edition is what I played. I don't know how long after that was. Maybe a year or maybe longer. I don't know. But that game I had very few issues with, technical and otherwise. Baldur's Gate 3, unfortunately, I had non-stop bugs, UI bugs, crashes, all sorts of stuff. Right? So I'm having to tolerate all of that while trying to play through a game that I was enjoying. I did enjoy what I played at Baldur's Gate 3. It was constantly things like that were happening, and compounded by some elements that I didn't enjoy the game. Very subjective stuff, like some of the area stuff like that. A awful quick saving, function. One of the worst I've seen in a modern game in a very long time. And then on top of that, I had some quests break. And so after all of this, I got to the final act, and I just stopped playing it because the game itself. It felt like the game itself was against me trying to enjoy that game. Now, at the end of the day, I didn't quite finish it. I got very close to finishing it. I had 100 and something hours in it. That game, at the time, I have not replayed it, but that game at the time, I was around a 7 or an 8 out of 10. That's how I felt about it. Like an actual true 7 or 8 out of 10, because I did have a lot of fun with the game. I did enjoy so many elements of the game. But to me, it did not hit the heights of Divinity Original Sin 2. That game was incredible. I had very little issues with that game. Divinity Original Sin 2 is in probably my top 5, if not top 10, top 5 best RPGs of all time. Like, that game was just so good. The music, everything like that. Whereas Baldur's Gate 3 never really hit any of those high points for me as a player. There are high points in that game. There are some phenomenal combat encounters. The characters and the writing and stuff, incredible. But it never gelled right. It never all gelled together. I made videos talking about this, specifically stating what I felt was a subjective topic that I did not enjoy, and what I felt was an objective topic of that game. Things that didn't work, things that were broken. I have never had so many dislikes on videos than I did with Baldur's Gate 3. And this is probably the best example of me having to deal with backlash from a community that would not accept any criticism of this game. Let's just bear in mind, I loved the Larian Studios. I loved what they did with getting Divinity on Switch. I loved the Divinity Original Sin 2, and I really was excited for Baldur's Gate 3. My mistake was playing Baldur's Gate 3 at launch, a game that was very, very big, and I should have given it 6 months to a year. The state of that game is significantly better now. It is something that I am very much considering going back to and playing, because I want to. I want to experience that game again. However, at the time, I cannot ignore that amount of bugs and things breaking. Unfortunately, this is something where tolerance comes into play. What is your tolerance? What is my tolerance to things breaking and me enjoying the game? There are two different things here. My enjoyment and butting my head against the wall of things that just do not work. Some games, and we'll get to that, I can kind of push through depending on how much I'm enjoying the gameplay. If, however, those bugs and those UI breaks and all those other things I mentioned about the game are causing significant impact on my enjoyment, How am I supposed to rate that game as game of the year? Right? In a year when everyone was like, oh my god, this is going to be game of the year, I did not think that. I did not have that experience. There is no way that I could put that as the number one best game to come out that year. And that is the best example of seeing fanboys, the fandom of that game, crack down and be like, shut up. You know, like, we don't want to, you know, your opinion is attacking me and all these sort of things. Which isn't the case. I never said the game was bad. I never said the game was necessarily broken. I mean, it should, as far as I was concerned, on launch, that game shouldn't have been rated higher than 5 or a 6, like an average to, or above average or an average game, because of the amount of bugs and issues with it. People have a tolerance they can overlook sort of things. But this is a perfect example of a game where I did enjoy it. I did have a good time with what I played, but I didn't rate it nearly as high. It wasn't a 10 out of 10. It wasn't a 9. It wasn't an 8. It was a 7. It was a good game. However, if I go back and play it now, and I experience none of that, this would be a higher rated game. This would be a game that I might consider to be as good as Divinity Original Sin 2. As it stands, it is not, because that's the experience that I had. And the amount of people that were like, you're wrong, you didn't play the game, all this sort of stuff, and I'm just thinking to myself, is this your personality? I know this game blew up for a lot of people, a lot of communities really gravitated towards what this game did for them, the characters, all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to knock the writing, I'm not going to knock necessarily all the music, there's so many good parts of this game, but as a game, as a complete package, it was not the game of the year for me that year. It could not be the game of the year for me that year. It couldn't even come close because of the experience I had. And there were people out there like me that also had similar experiences. My brother had a crashing bug that deleted his save files. Right? He still loved the game. Loved it. He was able to get past that and still loved the game and was like, this is awesome. If that was me, 0 out of 10, right? Because that's the sort of thing, when you have a game like that's that big, it deletes your progress. Oh my god, I don't have the time to do that again. It was a game that was incredibly, there was so much there that made the game incredible, but it would never hit that height, and that's something that, for me personally, on my channel, if you look at my Baldur's Gate videos, some of the comments are quite nasty. Why people feel the need to be that way, I don't know. It didn't make any difference on their experience. Their experiences were obviously fantastic. That's great. If you had a fantastic time with a game that I didn't like or I had issues with, awesome. I'm glad you were able to play it. So this brings me to the last game that I think is pretty obvious what it's going to be, that I wasn't as high on and had issues with, where I'm now starting to see people have umbrage with my takes. Clair Obscura, Expedition 33, is a very good game. There's a lot of things about it that are very good. However, there are things about that game that people keep claiming that I disagree with. I do not think it is as impactful or as genre pushing as people make it out to be. Let's look at what is good about Clair Obscura. You've got a really interesting cast of characters. You've got amazing voice acting, amazing motion capture. You have some, early on at least, you have some incredible visuals and areas you go to. There are some phenomenal pieces of music in this game. The combat is like Paper Mario. It's like Mario and Luigi series, where it's a very active combat. You can parry, dodge, whatever. Like, the combat is very cool. And I really liked this game for a good chunk of it. However, two things happened. One, I had constant crashes. Something to do with either my graphics card, my new one I got. It's an issue that should have been fixed. I have to hold it against Sandfall. I have to hold it against Unreal Engine. I have to hold it against AMD. Why wasn't this issue fixed? It was happening back when the game came out, and it never really got fixed now. And people are still having the same hard crash on AMD software. So that's already a point against the game, right? Like, that's not necessarily the game itself, but that is something that, you know, should have been sorted. Secondly, when I had to play the game in DirectX 11, which is not designed for, it really messed up the timing, the frame pacing, the timing of parries, things like that. So I eventually ended up putting the game on easy so that I could progress through it and enjoy it. As I went through the game, the big thing that I had that I considered to be an issue was this game is not respecting my time as a player in the combat. As I got into longer and longer boss fights, the boss would have 1 or 2 attacks. About 50 seconds would go by where I couldn't do anything. Yes, you could parry, I get it, parry and dodge, but I wasn't making progress on actually taking life off of the boss. and I ended up stopping after Act 2 because of a crash that wanted me to replay the last 2 bosses from Act 2. I did not enjoy those bosses from Act 2. I think the boss fights in this game are really not the best designed. I think in terms of what they are is really interesting. But if you've got to wait 30 to 40 seconds every time the boss has to attack, you're taking away player agency, and that was a big issue for me. I was like, my agency as a player is being taken away for these big grandiose attacks that I have to watch. My attack takes like 10 seconds, their attack takes like 30 seconds to 40 seconds. I'm like, and it's every time I attack, they attack twice. I attack, they attack twice. Very slow process. I didn't enjoy that. I think the boss fights started off good and got worse. And I also think that some of the elements of the story got worse as I went on. Like, it starts off really interesting, and then by the end of Act 2, I was like, I don't really care. I care about the characters. I'm interested in what they have to say, but I don't care about the storyline. And again, these things are subjective. I'm not against that. This is why I didn't hold that game in high regard. It's an 8 out of 10. It's an 8 out of 10 game. It's not a 9. It's not a 10. It's not the best game of the year. For me, right? For me, this is not the best game of the year. For me, there are other games that came out that I enjoyed significantly more, that had less bugs and issues, that didn't feel like my time was being slightly wasted, right? I'm not going to knock that Sandful are a small studio and they put out a very, very high quality game, right? I respect the people that worked on that game. I respect the fact that Lorien Testard, like, for his first game, did a really good job with the score. The music is something that people love. Do I think the soundtrack is the greatest of all time? No. I think there's a lot of phenomenal songs. I think that soundtrack has high highs, and then it's got a lot of lows. So for me, I look at that and I go, there are some incredible pieces of music here that will be remembered for all of eternity. Is it the best soundtrack that came out this year? No. Is that a subjective thing? Absolutely. I'm not above that. Like, I just listen to what I hear. 200 songs, maybe 50 of them I think are like absolutely, like, these are impeccable. But anytime I've mentioned things against this game, bear in mind, I think this game is an 8 out of 10. That's how good I think this game is. I have just listed off technical issues, taking away player agency, the boss fights not being that good, you know, the music not having some impeccable bits, and then some bits that are just, there's too much singing. That's kind of my thing. It was too much singing in here, and not enough of the awesome, like, instrumentals that you get. Monoko's theme is a modern classic. Like, there's some, the game is very, like, two halves, in my opinion. And I talked about this, and I talked about this in the video saying, like, here's a really good game, but I just don't think it's this, or this. I talked about it in the Game Awards video that I made, that I don't think the game is as good, or I don't think it's not that it's not deserving of Game of the Year, I just wouldn't put it as a Game of the Year. I think there are better games that are more consistent from start to finish. Bear in mind, and there's a bias there, I had lots of crashing. I had lots of technical issues. I cannot remove that from my playthrough because it happened to me. It's happened to other people. And so to take a game like that and go, hey, this is the best game that came out this year, I can't agree with that. On a fundamental level, that the game just did not work how it was intended. Had I played it on a PlayStation or Xbox, I'm sure it would have been fine. Had I used my old graphics card and continued to use that, I'm sure it would have been fine. But I have to take that into consideration. For me, I look at the games like Donkey Kong Bonanza. Very different games, right? One I had zero issues with, the other one I had technical issues with. Which do you think I am going to put above the other? Right? That is a completely logical way of looking at things. I had no issues with this game, therefore this game is probably better than this game, even though they're two very different genres. Right? I'm not going to compare DK to Clair Obscura, but which did I have more fun with? DK, right? That's not to say that should be the game that wins. I'm just saying that's my personal experience, right? So when I talk about these things, when I talk about this game, like Clair Obscura, it's a very, very, very solid game. It's just not there for me as this game that's impeccable. But again, same issues with these other games. People downvote your videos. People will be very negative because they believe that you are personally attacking them and their beliefs, their whole, this game is like my thing. It's not nothing to do. I honestly, I don't really care whether you love the game or hate the game. I put out my opinions because here's my honest take on a game. Had I had no technical issues with Clair Obscura, the only issue I would have had would be those last 2 boss fights that I tackled. The game wouldn't have crashed, and I probably would have finished it and gone through the whole of Act 3. And maybe it would have gone up, maybe it would have gone down. But what I can say is that those technical issues impacted it, and I can't then turn around and make a video and be like, this game's the best game ever. No, there were technical issues. That has to be taken into consideration. People have to understand that playing on a PC, there are a lot of variation. I get it, it's difficult. But, you know, it's the thing with games like this. Anytime a game gets popular, like really popular, yeah, people aren't always necessarily going to agree on it. But it doesn't take away from these games are still very good. If Clair Obscura is your favourite game of the year, awesome. Great. You know, it's not mine, but the fact that it's yours, great. Hang on to that. Enjoy the fact that your game's getting so much recognition, right? But why come after other people? Why go after other people because they don't agree? Right? I could have said Clair Obscura is crap and it's like a 5 out of 10. It's like average at best. But even I know that's not true. Like, as an RPG, does it push the genre on? No. Clair Obscura doesn't do anything new. It didn't have to do anything new to be a very good game, right? This idea that, like, oh, the combat system, like, this combat system existed for ages. All these elements of video games, a lot of this stuff has existed for ages. It's how it comes together, how it is portrayed to the player. How does the player feel, right? And that's the main important thing. There's humour, there's sorrow, the characters are well written, the characters are well voice acted. So much stuff. But just because I didn't think it was Game of the Year doesn't mean that I'm attacking you. Doesn't mean you need to come and be like awful towards me. Right? I generally don't care if people love this game or hate this game or feel mediocre about it. Right? The same with any game. I know what I personally like and I know what I personally enjoy. And obviously I want to see smaller companies do well. They deserve to do well. Right? These guys have put the time and the effort in, and they will go on to make great games. I have no doubt. But for me, it's not a game that is a 10 out of 10. It is not a 9 out of 10. It's an 8 out of 10 game that has issues. And that is still a really good rating for a game which I did not finish. And did not want to finish because it crashed constantly. Okay? So, now I'm going to flip things a little bit on the script. And I want to talk about a game that came out this year where I had nothing but issues, but ended up really enjoying the game. Borderlands 4 is a game that isn't going to win any awards, that deserves a lot of the criticism, that came out in a really poor state. Right? Let's not pretend that any of that didn't happen. Right? Borderlands 4, when I started playing it, I enjoyed it. And then the crashes kept happening. And at that point I was like, oh my god, it's Borderlands 3 all over again. It's a game that I think a lot of people do enjoy. I think it's a game that deserves a lot more praise than it actually gets. If you take away the technical issues for a second, there's a really solid game here. Right? Again, I don't like to use scores, but compared to all the other three games I've mentioned, Borderlands 4, I enjoyed way more. Now, why is that? Because I like the formula of those games. Me, personally, Borderlands 4 is the best RPG that came out this year, not Clair Obscura. But there's a big difference here, is that Borderlands 4 is a known quantity with a very, very, very big studio that should have put out a game that did not have that many issues. The engine they used, the amount of people on PC that are having issues, and also Randy Pitchford did not help, right? Absolutely, it deserved to get blasted. They have got to do so much to get that game in the best state they can possibly be in. And they have been, and I can respect the devs for that. I feel bad for them because they've had a ton of pressure on them they didn't need. But that is a game that I absolutely loved, from start to finish. And I worked through the amount of crashing, and more issues than anyone else that I knew that were playing it, right? I got through it, and at the end of it, I still felt like that was one of the best games I played all year. Because I enjoyed the gameplay and all that. Now, I know full well, me just saying I think that's a better RPG than Clair Obscura is going to upset somebody. Why? It shouldn't. They're two very different games. But if you're talking about RPGs, Borderlands is very much a looter shooter with RPG elements. Maybe it's not a full-blown RPG, first-person shooter RPG, but it's an RPG nonetheless. And I think it is better. I think I gelled well more with the gameplay. I found the writing to be funnier. Alright, I'm not saying the story's significantly better anyway. I just preferred what they were going for. I love the art style. Something that people go on about is Clair Obscura's art style. It's got a nice art style, but graphically it's not amazing. I'd rather play Borderlands. It's got a visual flair to it. Right? I'm not going to sit here and defend Borderlands 4 from all the technical issues. I had more crashes than anybody else I knew. I had more issues than anyone else I knew, right? That game is not a game that I would sit here and recommend to you, the person watching this, right? But for me personally, somebody who spent the money on it, I loved it. I thought the game was awesome. And this is where that dichotomy of things comes into play, where it's like, people are going to be like, well, it's not that great. I don't care. I had a good time. You had a good time playing Clair Obscura? Awesome. Go and enjoy that. Stop trying to push your opinion and your agenda onto other people. Right? Hollow Knight, people love that game. Good for you. Clair Obscura, people love that game. Good for you. Same with Baldur's Gate 3. It doesn't matter how many issues I have with games. Right? This is just a channel for me to air those opinions and try and just have an open discussion. I want to talk to people about these things. And I will say the Hollow Knight video, I had some awesome comments on there from people that genuinely were having a back and forth discussion. That's great. That's what I want to have. I want to talk to people about these games. Why did you love it? Why not, right? But if you're going to be one of these people that's trying to force your opinion and say that I'm wrong and you're right, I don't care. Go away. I have no interest in even having any kind of discussion there at all, right? I want you as the person watching this, I want you to enjoy the games you enjoy, and let me enjoy the games that I enjoy. And if I have some constructive criticism, either subjective or objective, it doesn't affect what you feel about a game. It will not affect you as a person, and that's how it should be. Like I said, I'm not above this. I have been that person too. I have criticized people complaining about Donkey Kong Country, about some of the Mario games and that, and I have to stop myself. I have to stop myself from commenting on so many videos and going, what does it matter? What does it matter if this person didn't like that game? I loved it. That's all that matters. And the same for you people there watching, like out there. If you love a game and somebody constructively criticizes it or thinks your game is bad, what does it matter? You have played a game that you love, and that's what's most important. That's what this comes down to, is that no matter how much you like or dislike something, you know what your personal preferences are, and you know what to enjoy when you play a game. Recently, I've got a friend of mine, you may or not have seen, shout out to Greg. He did a whole video on, it was about tabletop RPGs, about a particular tabletop RPG that he did not enjoy. And he went through all the reasons why he did and did not enjoy it. Right? And the thing is that that's a completely legitimate way of explaining it. Yeah, alright, different medium. Same thing applies here. I can sit here on this channel and say why I don't think these things are good or bad, but I can do it in a way that isn't insulting towards that thing, right? And that's where I kind of feel a lot of the time is that I don't care if people are shocked that I think Borderlands is one of the best games I played this year. I don't care if people are shocked that I think Clair Obscura is good, is a great game, but isn't that personally worthy of Game of the Year, right? You pick and choose, and you have your preferences, and enjoy that, and absolutely hold on to the things that you love, because that means those games had such a good positive impact on you as a person. Awesome. But just don't go out of your way to suddenly enforce that on other people who don't like the game. They might be like, I didn't like Clair Obscura, I found the combat too hard, even on easy. Let them be. Dark Souls is a phenomenal game to talk about with that. When people are like, oh no, I didn't really get on with the game, I find it quite difficult. Oh yeah, well, you need to get good. Toxic. There's so much toxicity in these. Even Baldur's Gate 3 is full of toxic people. Alright? I don't know about Clair Obscura, and I don't know about Hollow Knight, but Baldur's Gate 3, the Dark Souls community, incredibly toxic. Right? You are meant to be welcoming. You are the people that are holding the flag for these video games because you think they're so good. Welcome people in, talk to them, have discussions, try to get them to like it. If they don't like it, they don't like it. Leave them be. And that's the same anyone out. Right? I know I can do better, personally, where I need to accept. Sometimes I do find it hard to accept. This game is so good, why don't you like it? It's okay if someone else doesn't like it. As long as you like it, what does it matter? Right? I know the internet is an anonymous place out there and people can just spam whatever they want and say whatever they want, but ultimately, let people enjoy video games at whatever level. If they don't like this game and they want to play this game, let them play that game. Let them enjoy it. The world's full of rubbish. Let people enjoy their video games and stop trying to force your opinions on them and stop going after people. So, this has been a fairly long, slightly ranty video, but I really needed to make this. For me personally, I want to have discussions with people about video games. I want people to come in and say, this is why I didn't like a game, or this is why I like this game, right? I'm trying to do better all the time by trying to break down my points from a subjective point of view and an objective point of view, right? So that people can kind of understand where I come from and what my preferences are, so that it creates a discussion. If I say I'm not really a fan of this, somebody else might go in, well, actually, this can lead to this and X, Y, and Z, and that's great. But we need to get past this. This guy doesn't like Claire Obscura, downvote all his videos or whatever. Downvote them all you want, but if you've got something to say, try and make it constructive. Try and make a discussion from it, rather than just being like, "Oh, you didn't play the game." It's stuff like that, and I think we can all do a better job. But yeah, thank you very much for sitting through this video. If you have, I do hope that people have their own opinions and if you've experienced something like this, let me know. Because I think it's something, I've gone through it just from doing YouTube. Putting myself out there on YouTube, people get on my case about stuff all the time. When I talk about games that I like or don't like. But yeah, no, if you like the video, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you want to see more content and get back to more discussion stuff, then obviously hit subscribe. I want to do more videos like this and have these kind of topics. Until next video, I will see you then.